Hi guys, David O'Sullivan here. Welcome back to a new installment of Monthly Film Roundup. And I know I haven't done one of these in quite a while, but I thought I'd bring it back for September because even though I did get a review out for Wind River, I wasn't able to do any videos on any of the other films I saw, and I saw about 6 or 7 films, so I thought I would do this video in which I'll be able to talk about all the films that I saw over the course of the month of September and give you my quick thoughts and little kind of mini recaps and reviews of each of the films that I saw. Now the only really big movie that came out in September that I didn't get a chance to see was American Assassin. I did want to see that, but then the later trailers kind of it didn't really do it for me, and then the reviews came out and everyone was saying that it wasn't that great, so I decided to give it a miss. I was going to see it, but then it just came and went so quickly I just didn't get the chance to in the end. That's pretty much it really. All the other big major films in September I saw. Now American Made, which has only just recently come out in the US in September, came out end of August here in the UK, so I'm not going to be talking about American Made in this video. I did give my quick thoughts on it in my summer movies ranking video, so if you want to know my quick kind of brief overall thoughts on American Made, be sure to check that video out. Do keep in mind that when I made that video I'd literally just seen the film, so in hindsight I probably would have bumped it up to maybe just above Detroit. And also, like I said, Wind River is kind of the opposite to American Made, whereas that came out end of August in the US, but we didn't get it until beginning of September here in the UK. So I'll be talking about Wind River in this video, but not American Made. Right, now with all that out of the way, let's get into this now with the first movie that came out in September, and it is of course It. Now, I didn't get the chance to see it when it was first released. I could have, but I wasn't really all that, excited about seeing it. And not because it didn't look good. I like the look of the trailers. I'm just not a really big horror fan. I don't typically go out and see horror movies in the cinema. I mean, the last horror film I saw in the cinema was probably The Woman in Black back in 2012, so like 5 years ago. I don't really like watching horror movies. Horror movies aren't really my thing. But there was so much buzz and so much kind of like positivity in terms of how good it was as a movie. I think I just had to check it out, so I went to see it to see what all the fuss was about. Yeah, it was a good movie. Now, I didn't personally love it. I can totally see why any big horror fan or any big fan of the source material would absolutely love the movie, for sure. It's not really my kind of thing, but I did think it was a good film. I think it was well made, it was well directed. I really like what the director, Andy Muschietti, I think his name is, what he did with this movie. I mean, it looked great. I really loved the kind of the art direction, the set direction, the set design. It all looked really cool. I love this kind of setting of the 80s. And by far the biggest thing I liked about this movie is that it was kind of like a movie about these kids. It was kind of like a coming of age film in the vein of like a Stand By Me or an E.T. almost. It was almost harkening back to kind of like the 80s Spielberg movies. And in fact, the movie it reminded me of the most actually was Super 8, the J.J. Abrams film, which was kind of like his version of a kind of 80s Spielberg sci-fi. And it reminded me a lot of that, but instead of like this group of kids in the midst of this alien encounter, it was like a group of kids in the midst of this kind of monster trying to take over the town. So I kind of liked that. It didn't always work for me. Sometimes there was a little bit of a kind of like a mishmash in terms of 1 minute it was like kind of light-hearted, kids movie, and the next minute it was kind of like trying to be some serious, intense horror. Sometimes it didn't always mix and it didn't always gel together. Maybe the biggest criticism I have, and I'm usually a big wuss when it comes to horror movies, but I really felt like this movie could have been a lot more intense, a lot more powerful, a lot more scary, because even me, as someone who is a real wuss, and I just don't like watching horror movies at all, the movie didn't really scare me that much, which I'm kind of glad, because, I don't like being scared, but I didn't really find the movie as intense and as powerful and as full as I thought it might have been. The projector scene I thought was pretty intense. I thought that was really good. But as far as the horror elements are concerned, I felt this movie was it was a little underwhelming, and I'm saying that as someone who's not a big horror fan. But yeah, I think it could have been a lot more scary, a lot more powerful, a lot more intense. But that aside, I did really enjoy it for what it was. Like I said, I'm not a big horror guy, but I did think it was a good movie. I really liked all the kids. I think there was a great young cast there. I love the whole kind of Stand By Me, kind of like coming of age kind of aspect of the film with these kids, coming together. One last thing I had to say, the biggest thing I liked about this movie, it was a little bit heavy-handed, it was a little bit on the nose, but it was the theme of, coming together, and if they can come together and unite, they'll be able to kind of face their fears and overcome their fears. It was a little bit kind of on the nose towards the end in the finale of the film, but that was probably one of the biggest things I liked about this movie. That's why I can kind of give it a pass and it not being really kind of intense and scary, you know, because it wasn't really trying to be like the most intense, scary film. It was trying to be this film about these group of kids and them coming together and facing their fears and overcoming their fears. And if they come together and unite and stand together, they'll be stronger as a team and they'll be able to face their fears and overcome their fears. And I think that was a really great theme. It was a little bit maybe too on the nose, you know, towards the end of the movie, but I really like that about this film. And I thought it was really well done. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing It Chapter 2 as well. I can't wait to see what they do with that film. So yeah, I didn't love it. I didn't think it was absolutely amazing. You know, it didn't blow my socks off. But I did think it was a good film, and I did enjoy it for what it was. And I'm looking forward to seeing where the franchise goes next. Next up, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a film that I've already reviewed, but it is Wind River. I'm going to try and keep this as short as I can because I've done like a 10-minute review on the movie already. But yeah, I really enjoyed Wind River. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. For me, it's one of the top 10 best films of the year so far. It might end up getting bumped out of the top 10 by the time the year rolls to an end. But as of right now, I think it is one of the best films so far this year. Taylor Sheridan did a really impressive job with this movie from a directorial standpoint. His first feature film as a director, and I think he did a really great job. And of course, the writing is always great. You know, we've seen what he did with Hell or High Water and Sicario, and now with this third film in this kind of thematic trilogy that he's been doing. Of course, now with him directing and the director's chair, I think he did a really great job. For me, one of the best things about this film were the performances, and I think Jeremy Renner did an absolutely fantastic job in this film. And I think it's probably, you know, off the top of my head, I think the best performance of his career. He really blew me away in this song. So I'm a big Jeremy Renner fan, but for me, this is, I think, the best he's ever been. I think he was absolutely fantastic, a really kind of emotionally compelling, really quite powerful performance, but, you know, understated at the same time. But he really kind of disappeared. I didn't see Jeremy Renner, I just saw him as that character, and it felt so real and tangible and palpable, where it didn't feel like I was watching an actor pretending. It felt like I was watching a real person conveying these kind of genuine emotions. It felt so real and raw and powerful and intense. Elizabeth Olsen I really liked as well, and the kind of Clarice Starling kind of almost role as this rookie FBI agent. And yeah, I just thought it was a really great, really compelling crime, mystery, thriller. Taylor Sheridan, I think, did a fantastic job, and yeah, I just absolutely loved Wind River. And the next film I saw this past month was Darren Aronofsky's Mother. Now, this has been proving to be a very controversial one, and for understandable reasons. You know, it's a very different kind of film. But for me personally, I'm just going to put it out there straight away, I loved Mother. Now, going into this film, I really didn't know what to expect. I mean, I kind of did because I heard a lot of things from people that had seen the movie, but I still was unsure of how I was going to personally react to the film. I was worried that I was going to really not like the movie and take against it. I really didn't know how I was going to react and respond to it. And really, one of the biggest reasons why I went to see the movie was because, you know, although initially I wasn't really all that interested in seeing the film, as soon as I started hearing these kind of wildly kind of diverse, kind of varied, mixed opinions and reactions from everyone who'd seen it, I was like, I've got to see this movie now. Because even some of the negative points that people were bringing up, I was like, you know what, that makes me want to see the movie more. I want to see it because of those negatives they're saying. And I went to see the film, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Now, I can totally understand why anyone would take against the movie and not like it, but for me personally, I love this film. It's really hard to talk about without kind of going into spoilers and, you know, revealing what actually the movie is really about. So I won't really get into that here, but for me, I love the fact that it was a film that was very symbolic, very metaphorical in terms of, you know, and a lot of movies are like this. Okay, this movie took it to a lot more to the extreme than most, but there's been a lot of big movies out there that have, you know, symbolism and are very kind of metaphorical. And even though this movie took it a lot more to the extreme than most, it still really worked for me. And I was worried it wouldn't. I was worried I wouldn't like the movie, but for me, I thought it was so fantastically well done, both from a technical standpoint and how Darren Aronofsky directed the movie and everything as far as the technical aspects, but for me, it really hit me as well. And I know that there's been a lot of controversy over the third act, but for me, the final act really worked. It was really powerful, and although I was worried the movie was going to start to lose me towards the middle of the film, you know, in the second act, it started to get maybe a little repetitive. As soon as I was worried it was going to maybe lose me, it got me right back in again, and I was hooked for the majority of the runtime, really. And as soon as we got into that third act, that's when the movie really went up a gear, and it really worked for me, because everything that happens throughout the film leading up to that point is a build-up to that really great payoff we get in the third act. And yes, there's some controversial things that happen, but, you know, it's a movie, it's art. You know, I'm not offended. I rarely see a movie and I'm offended by it, because I'm like, well, it's not real, it's made up, it's just, you know, artsy, you know, images we're seeing put on the screen. But the final act really worked for me. It really hit me. And there's particular, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's this particular moment with Jennifer Lawrence when her character just finally just cracks and just explodes, and I just got chills. And I just, at that moment, I was like, yeah, this is one of my favourite films of the year. And I did not think I was going to end up liking this movie as much as I did. I know I'm being quite vague here, I'm not really talking about, you know, what actually happens or talking about specifics, but it's really hard to get into it without spoiling anything. I don't want to reveal anything or give my interpretation of the film or say what I think the film is about or what it's kind of representing, just in case you haven't seen the movie, or you want to just see it for yourself and to make up your own mind and to see how you view the movie. Because one of the great things about this movie is that it is very ambiguous. It is kind of very kind of open to audience interpretation. And even though there's, I think, one set way that I think the movie should be viewed, and the way I saw it as, and the way the director intended it to, it's also really great in terms of lots of people have seen it in lots of different ways and interpreted the events of the film and the characters' actions in the film in very different ways. And that's what's so great. And that's what's so great about films like Mother, is that any one person could see the movie and see it in a different way. I saw it in one particular way, and very much in the way that the director intended, and I thought it was quite obvious at times. But I do love the fact that, you know, there's other people out there that see the movie and it affects them and hits them in also very different ways. And I think that's one of the best things about this film, and one of the best things about films that are very ambiguous and don't spell everything out to you, is that you could interpret it in very different ways to somebody else. That's what I think so great about Mother. I think Jennifer Lawrence was absolutely fantastic in this movie. I could see her getting nominated. I don't think that's going to happen a lot because it is a very weird, different film, but I think she gave an absolutely amazing performance where the whole movie is basically just her. She's in almost every single shot of the film, and she really carries this film, and it's a very kind of emotionally demanding performance as well. She emotes a lot throughout this film, and it's very demanding on her as an actress, and I think she's did an incredible job, you know, in terms of, you know, the figure she's supposed to be, I saw her as representing, in terms of all the emotions she goes through and everything that she sees and reacts to in this film. I think she did an incredible job. Javier Bardem as well. All the acting in this film I thought was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I love Mother. It's not to be taken 100% literally. I think anyone who goes to this movie and puts it down and says it was boring, it was rubbish, made no sense, I think it's just a very ignorant, narrow-minded way of looking at it, because you're not meant to take it 100% literally. It is kind of a lot of this film, if not all of it, is a kind of a visual representation for something else. And for me, a lot of the times, it was quite obvious what it was actually kind of symbolically standing for, what certain images and certain events and certain actions were actually a parable for. And I think it really worked. And I think it hit me and was so much more powerful for me because it wasn't literal, because it was like it was putting across certain messages and certain themes and certain comments on the world and our society, but through something else. What we saw in the film wasn't what the film was literally about, if you know what I mean. And yeah, that's just, you know, some of the many reasons why I loved Mother. It is one of my favourite films of the year so far. So there we go, Darren Aronofsky's Mother. And then the next movie I saw in September was Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and this is another movie that I was surprised got a very mixed response, quite negative response actually. There's a lot of people, even a lot of people that love the first movie, that have really taken against this movie. And I'm just going to put it right out there straight away. I kind of don't understand it. I can totally understand why anyone would think this movie wasn't as good as the first, and why anyone would prefer the first movie over this one, absolutely. What I don't understand is the people that love the first movie that really hated this one. I just don't get it. It is different. They didn't do the same thing as the first movie, but that's what I liked about it. I like that it wasn't just a rehash of the first movie. I like that they did something different. But I also like the fact that they brought back the things that we loved from the first movie, like the action, the very kinetic, fast-paced, frenetic style in terms of the filmmaking, how Matthew Vaughn shoots the action sequences in a very kind of kinetic, fast-paced, crazy, insane way. And the one criticism that I really don't understand about this movie is that people are saying that oh my god, it was just way too full-on and intense and crazy and insane, and I'm there thinking, it's a bit hypocritical to say that, isn't it? And if you think the first movie is amazing and you loved it, I don't understand how you could put this movie down for being too crazy and over the top and insane, because yes, absolutely, this movie went even more full-on and intense and crazy than the first film, but the first movie was pretty insane. I mean, it's like, people are saying, the first movie was a lot more subtle, it wasn't as insane and crazy and over the top. Really? I mean, are you really going to tell me that church scene and the exploding heads at the end of the film in the first Kingsman was subtle and not cartoony and insane and over the top? I just don't get it. So for me, the fact that this movie went even more crazy and more insane and intense and over the top wasn't a bad thing. I like that. I mean, that's what I wanted from a Kingsman movie. So I'm not going to put the movie down because of that. I mean, I would have been disappointed if the movie didn't do that. That's what I want from a Kingsman movie. That's what I loved about the first movie. And the fact that this second movie gave me more of that, I was happy with that. That's what I was expecting, and that's what I wanted from a Kingsman movie. The only criticism I do agree with as far as this second film is that I feel like it was a little bit too full-on as far as the story was concerned. The first movie was a lot more simple, straightforward. It was a lot more of just a shorter, just getting straight to it, get the job done film. This movie, it just felt like they tried to cram too much into one film as far as the story was concerned. There's so many different subplots, and I agree with that criticism. There didn't need to be as many subplots as there was. And although I liked most, if not all of the subplots, I mean, there was Eggsy and his girlfriend, there was Eggsy and Harry, there was one with the president, there was one with Julianne Moore, there was a lot of different subplots in this movie, but they kind of didn't need to all be in the movie. It felt a little bit too just overstuffed and overloaded at times as far as the story was concerned. That's the only criticism that I agree with. For example, the president subplot, I didn't dislike that subplot, but you could have completely taken it out of the movie and it wouldn't have made a difference. It wasn't absolutely necessary for the story they were trying to tell. It didn't need to be in there. And of course, there's the whole controversial scene, the Glasgow scene when they go to Glastonbury. I didn't necessarily find... I didn't have a problem with the scene, but I can totally understand why others do have a problem with it. And what I do agree with is that, it didn't need to be in the movie. It was such an overly convoluted, way of them getting to another place in the movie. The only reason that sequence was in the film was because they needed to find out that the cure, the antidote, was in Italy. They could have done that in a lot more of a simpler, straightforward way. Oh, look, we need to go to Italy. But then they went this really long-winded, convoluted way around that of having this long, extended sequence of them going to Glastonbury, introducing this girl. I just don't think it was necessary. They didn't need to do that. But there was a lot about this movie that I really liked, as I said. I love the action, the fast-paced, frenetic, hyperkinetic style of filmmaking that Matthew Vaughn brings to his movies, especially with the Kingsman films. The cast, performances all round were great. Taron Egerton back as Eggsy, Mark Strong as Merlin, Colin Firth as Harry. I really liked the actual the relationship between Eggsy and Harry in this film, even though he's kind of brought back from the dead, and it's like the way they do that is a little underwhelming and anticlimactic, I suppose, but I don't really care because I love the role he played in the movie, and the relationship between Eggsy and Harry was one of the best things about this film for me. There's a particular scene involving Harry and a dog, and I thought that was a really great scene, really emotionally impacting, and also that scene with Harry and the dog had the exact same music as the Rage and Serenity scene from X-Men First Class. It's literally the exact same track. I noticed it instantly, which it's not a surprise because it's the same composer, but it is rare that you see that. But I'm glad they kept that music in because it really worked and it really fit. So yeah, I wasn't head over heels in love with Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I didn't think it was an absolutely amazing film, but there was a lot I really liked about it. The direction, the acting, the fast-paced, crazy, insane, over-the-top nature of the movie. Yeah, I think it was a little bit too crammed and stuffed full and overloaded of too many subplots and too many things going on in the story, but other than that, I had a really good time with Kingsman. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I actually thought it was pretty good. I had a lot of fun with it. So there we go, Kingsman, The Golden Circle. And the penultimate movie here is Borg, McEnroe, and this is of course the movie that explores the famous rivalry between, tennis players Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe, and the match that they had back in the 80s, I think it was. I didn't love this movie, I didn't think it was absolutely fantastic, but I did really like it. And one of the things I liked most about it was that it wasn't just about the famous match. It wasn't just about, this rivalry. It was also a very kind of psychological film, and that kind of surprised me, although it kind of makes sense on reflection when you think about it, because it is a foreign film, and so it's not this fast-paced, intense kind of American movie. It's a lot slower, maybe it was a little bit too slow, but I like the fact that it was this slower, more methodical, kind of introspective look at the rivalry. It wasn't just about these guys as tennis players, and it wasn't just about the matches that they played, but it was also about the psychological demands that they're faced with when they're playing this sport, and everything they've gone through, on their own, and we get them crossing over towards the end in this famous kind of final match that they had at Wimbledon. But what I really liked about this movie is that it was slower, it was more introspective, it was almost like a psychological drama in a way. So I feel like if you haven't seen this movie yet, go in knowing that it's not some fast-paced, crazy, intense film. I mean, it gets quite riveting and intense towards the end when we get that actual final match itself. That was really great and really well done. But a lot of the film leading up to that is a lot slower, and it is more psychological and introspective. But I really like that, and I like the fact that it went deeper into these characters. There was a lot more about Bjorn Borg than it was John McEnroe, even though Shia LaBeouf was absolutely amazing as John McEnroe, and I could have done with a lot more of him, because I think he was absolutely fantastic. But it was a Bjorn Borg film, and that's not a surprise because I think it was a Swedish film and a Swedish director, but it is a film about Bjorn Borg, and I think they did the story justice, and I think it was really well done. Like I said, it could have been better, maybe it was a little bit too slow at times, and it could have had a little bit more energy to it, I suppose, but it did pay off for me with that really great, riveting final match at the end of the movie. And I loved how they explored the rivalry between these two tennis players, but also explored, how what's going on inside their heads, and how it was very psychologically demanding for them, and how these two polar opposites players are actually that different, and maybe more similar than a lot of us maybe initially realised. I thought that was really fascinating, looking into the past of Bjorn Borg, and then looking at how that compares and contrasts with what John McEnroe is like, and that was all really fascinating. I thought really well done. The performances were great. Like I said, Shia LaBeouf was a real standout as John McEnroe. And yeah, so overall I really enjoyed this movie. I didn't absolutely love it, I didn't think it was fantastic or anything, but I think it was a really good movie. I would recommend seeing it, especially if you're a fan of tennis and these kind of famous tennis players and Wimbledon and all of that. I definitely recommend checking it out, because it was a really great true story, sports drama kind of movie. But there we go, Borg versus McEnroe. And finally, the last movie that I checked out in September, the film I most recently saw, was Goodbye Christopher Robin. And I really liked this movie. I was worried it was going to be maybe a little, maybe a little bit soft, a little bit fluffy, a little bit kiddie, not go as, as deep as I wanted it to. But I'm really happy to say that even though it is a PG movie, it was, really kind of emotionally impacting for me. By far the most emotional movie I saw in September. It really hit me, especially towards the end. I was really fighting to hold back the tears, and it was really enlightening, because I didn't really know a whole lot behind the backstory of the Winnie the Pooh books. I grew up with Winnie the Pooh. I loved all those characters and those stories and those films. I think that the Tigger movie was actually, this first movie I ever saw in the cinema. I've always had a really kind of close bond and close affection with Winnie the Pooh and those characters and those books and that source material. But it was also really great to learn the kind of true story, the origins behind the making of this, which I never even knew about. In fact, before the trailer, I didn't even realise Christopher Robin was actually A.A. Milne's son's name, that he actually, based Christopher Robin off his actual own son, and that was the name of his son. And it was a really great film. What really hit me the most about this movie was that it was a film about a father and son, and the relationship between this father and son. And A.A. Milne, the father, he was disillusioned from World War One. He was really kind of angry at the world and really anti-war. These Winnie the Pooh books were birthed as kind of an antidote to war, to make people just happy again. And it it was really inspiring stuff and really hit me, and just the whole relationship between A.A. Milne and his son Christopher Robin, with the young boy who plays Christopher Robin, he was really great as well. Margot Robbie's in the film also, and yeah, it was just a really inspiring, really just emotionally compelling true story film that was almost like a Miss Potter kind of thing, how Miss Potter was like the origins of how the Beatrix Potter, Peter Rabbit movies came about, and how like say Mr. Banks also was like the true story origins of how Mary Poppins came about. It was very much that similar kind of thing. So if you like those movies, I think you'll really like this. You know, it wasn't the most amazing film ever. It was it did drag in parts. It did feel quite long, but you know, I got really invested and really engaged with this movie, and it really hit me from an emotional standpoint, especially as we got towards the end of the movie. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking out Goodbye Christopher Robin. I don't think it's one of the best films of the year or anything, but it did really hit me, and I was really engaged and invested and really inspired by this amazing true story. So there we go, Goodbye Christopher Robin. And there we have it. That was my roundup of all of the films that I saw in September. Like I said, I didn't get the chance to check out American Assassin. An American Made was also released end of August here in the UK, so that's why I didn't talk about that in this video. But overall, September was kind of a mixed month. There was no films I saw that I didn't like or that I thought were bad or disappointed me. I actually really enjoyed Kingsman. It was an amazing film, but I had fun with it and it gave me what I wanted. Borg vs. McEnroe wasn't a spectacular film, but I still really enjoyed it for what it was. It as well, I didn't absolutely love it, but I still thought it was good. So there's a lot of films that came out that I liked, I thought were good, but didn't blow me away. In fact, the only movies I saw in September that really did work for me were Wind River and Mother, and those two films are two of my favourite films of the year so far, especially Mother. It's hard to recommend Mother because, you know, some people really love the film and some people have really hated the film, so I don't know whether to recommend people to see Mother, because I didn't know whether I was going to like it or not, and it actually really surprised me. It was a really pleasant surprise for me because I didn't know whether I was going to like it or not, but I really did. But then I kind of like these more ambiguous artsy films that are open to interpretation and kind of very symbolic and metaphorical, and you can really get engaged and really think about what you're watching. If you like movies that are like that, I definitely recommend Mother. If you don't, and that infuriates you, where you don't immediately understand what's going on, and you don't get the film from a literal standpoint, then I don't recommend seeing Mother because you really will hate it. So the movie that I saw that I probably would recommend the most is Wind River, because that was more conventional, but at the same time it was a really fantastic crime mystery thriller film, almost in the vein of a Silence of the Lambs kind of thing, really, but with Taylor Sheridan's trademark style of writing, with what he brought to Sicario and Hell or High Water. That was this modern take on this crime mystery, murder mystery concept, and I think why I recommend Wind River the most, even though I probably like Mother more, it's based off true events, which I didn't realise, and that really took me off guard. And also, it has some of the best performances of the year so far. I think Jeremy Renner, what he did in that film, is one of the best performances by an actor I've seen so far this year. So even though I really love Mother, and that really worked for me, and that's one of my personal favourites of the year so far, I don't know if I can recommend that as my number one film you have to check out. So even though Wind River did come out end of August in the US, it didn't come out here in the UK until the beginning of September. So I think my pick of the month for September will be Wind River. And if you want to know more about my thoughts on Wind River, you want to see me go a little bit more in depth maybe and talk a little bit more about the film, be sure to check out my Wind River review. It was the only movie I saw in September that I did actually review. But there we go, that wraps up my monthly film roundup for all of the films that I saw in September. What did you think about September as a whole? Were there some movies that you saw that I didn't see? What did you think about them? Let me know in the comments down below. And what are your thoughts or your opinions on the films that I did see? Did you like them? Did you not like them? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. What is your best film that came out in September? And as always, if you like this and you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. And if you missed my last film review, be sure to click over here to catch up on my last review of Wind River, I believe, or perhaps down here to catch up on another one of my recent videos. But with that said, I've been David O'Sullivan. I'll see you next time.